I'm just gonna put it bluntly, Godzilla King of the Monsters is bloody awful. I've never seen a film mutilated to this degree before. It completely betrays what made the original Godzilla a masterpiece in the first place, and oh, I'm sorry. My bad. I'm not talking about the 2019 King of the Monsters. That movie was actually awesome, despite what the critics and people online have to say. I'm just gonna put it bluntly, Godzilla King of the Monsters is bloody awful. I've never seen a film mutilated to this degree before. It completely betrays what made the original Godzilla a masterpiece in the first place, and all the questionable edits and laughably bad additions leave the film feeling devoid of identity, soul, and most importantly, subtext. Now before I dive into the meat and potatoes, I'd just like to bring something to your attention real quick. According to my analytics, 98.9% of people watching my videos aren't subscribed. Bruh, that's insane. On this channel I mainly discuss movies and films, with the occasional episode of Quality Corner where I ramble and review the games I've been playing. If you like that sort of thing, you should subscribe to my channel to receive all of my quality content right in your feed. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. The original 1954 Godzilla film was a massive hit back in the day. I mean, it was such a huge success that it spawned over 25 films and counting. Whether it be sequels, different interpretations of the character, or new directions for Big G that differ from its roots. Even with all that, people are still talking about the first movie. Everyone knows about it, everyone likes it, and if you don't like it, well, please let me know in the comments and social media so I can promptly block you and report you for harassment. But in all seriousness, if you haven't seen it, you pretty much know what it's about on a surface level at the very least. Giant radiation-filled dinosaur monster goes for a rampage throughout Tokyo, and eventually gets defeated by the humans. That surface level summary is the same in both versions of the film, but the main difference is that the American version has added scenes with reporter Steve Martin, played by Raymond Burr, a popular actor in the 1950s. He narrates over the majority of the scenes, which basically just amounts to him explaining just what the hell is going on to the viewer, who presumably doesn't speak Japanese. The way they go about this though is incredibly weird. For starters, there are zero subtitles throughout the whole movie, even when the characters are speaking Japanese. You know how in most movies when there's someone speaking a foreign language, there's going to be subtitles added in by default, even with subtitles turned off? Well, that's not a thing in this movie, leaving the audience watching along completely clueless as to what the heck people on the screen are even talking about, thus forcing you to rely on Raymond's narration. I don't know, maybe there just wasn't a standard for encompassing foreign languages in films yet. I mean, this is the 50s we're talking about, so there's probably a lot of tricks of the trade or art, I suppose, that weren't discovered yet. In saying that though, at the same time there are various scenes where the Japanese voice characters are actually dubbed, strangely enough. And it's not just in scenes when they're speaking to Steve either. During the conversation where Ogata and Emiko confront Dr. Serizawa about using the oxygen destroyer to kill Godzilla, all three of them are dubbed, even though they're all Japanese speaking to one another. This wouldn't be weird if this movie was a dub, but that's the problem. It isn't a dub. We've seen these same characters speaking their native tongue earlier on in the movie. It'd be like me sitting down with my family for Christmas dinner, only for us all to start speaking Mandarin to each other. I know the real reason for this is because, we wouldn't know what was happening because Steve isn't present at the time. But in this movie's reality, it just doesn't make any sense and comes off really jarring. In the few scenes where the main characters from the original film are actually talking to Steve directly, it's pretty bad to say the least. You can clearly tell that Raymond is interacting with body doubles, as you never see their face, and half the time they're not even looking at Burr directly. Damn, why is Dr. Yamane so rude, man? I know Steve doesn't belong in the movie, but still. The utter disrespect. The problem with Raymond Burr's narration is that it often leads to misinformation and mistranslation of the conversations actually taking place. You see, accompanying Steve is his translator buddy, who, as you can assume, translates what the characters are saying during various scenes. That's how we supposedly know what the Japanese speaking characters are even talking about. However, he must not be that good at his job because he quite often falsely translates what people are saying. For example, in one of the many scenes where a meeting is taking place, Steve's translator incorrectly states that Dr. Yamane is talking about speaking with the natives on Odo Island, a small village close in proximity to many of the recent boat accidents, so they can find out more about what's happening. But this is simply not true. In the Japanese original, Yamane is telling the other people in attendance not to kill Godzilla, and instead put their efforts towards researching the creature. As a matter of fact, this whole scene is completely messed up in the American version as a whole. This meeting in particular is supposed to take place after Yamane's visit to Odo Island, and witnessing Godzilla firsthand. hence why they're discussing what to do about the creature. However, in the re-edit, this footage is used before they even step foot on the island. We are actually introduced to Dr. Yamane in this scene, despite it not being his introduction in the original cut of the movie. Funnily enough, you can even hear the Japanese actor for Yamane mention Godzilla in this scene.
I'm afraid my Japanese is a little rusty.
Even though they haven't even gone to the island yet and learnt of Godzilla at all. Pretty much removing any credibility this scene could have had. This brings me to one of the larger problems the American version has, which is the odd re-editing and changes made to the original film. A quick gander at the running time of the two versions and you'll notice something is off immediately. Wait a minute. Why is the American version missing 18 minutes of footage? Well, they didn't just add new scenes with Burr and reshuffle previous ones, they also cut a lot of the scenes from the original. This was done to put more emphasis on Burr's character and remove any unnecessary baggage that didn't add much to the American cut of the movie. Ugh. Just saying that makes me feel wrong. The fact that they felt the need to butcher this movie so much is bloody gross, in my opinion. When it comes to additions, I think the most unintentionally funny aspect of this movie was the decision to constantly cut to Raymond Burr reacting to every situation, whilst giving his commentary. Seriously, it feels like this film cuts to his face every 5 minutes, even during Godzilla Rampage scenes. I guess they felt the need to remind American audiences that, hey, don't worry guys, the white dude you like hasn't gone anywhere. You can still keep watching. It's alright. This whole film plays out like bad fan fiction. Like someone wrote themselves into their favourite movie and made it so they were integral to the plot of the film. I mean, in the opening of the movie, Steve is introduced as an old friend of Serizawa's. And it's through that connection that he just so happens to know every other major and important character integral to the film. Unfortunately, due to copyright, I can't actually show you much of the movie at all, so to demonstrate my point, here's my new and improved version of Godzilla 2014. Truly saddening, the events taking place right in front of my eyes. A man and his wife separated in this outbreak of a nuclear breach, and you know, she was a good friend of mine, Sandra Brody. She was a very good friend, so it's sad to see her go. And of course, Joe Brody was very sad as well. And why did you have to be on the other side of the reactor? Now that just makes things awkward and very emotional and sad, as you can see. Good thing I've got my galaxy counters. I bought them on the way in, so I have sustenance in this tragedy. As you can imagine, all this cutting and reshuffling inevitably leads to entire story arcs feeling underdeveloped and entire chunks of missing context. The example that comes to mind is the relationship between Emiko and Ogata. The love triangle between Dr. Serizawa, Ogata and Emiko is one of the main plot points from the original movie, and it's barely even touched upon in the 1956 re-edit. Essentially, Emiko and Serizawa are engaged. They like each other, but they're not really in love. I mean, it was an arranged marriage. No. Emiko's heart belongs to Ogata, and Serizawa is more in love with his work. Or at least he was until he created the oxygen destroyer. This creates a bit of a complex situation which ultimately adds more layers to the movie. Not only did the characters feel more fleshed out, but finding love outside of traditional marriage was a lot more taboo back then. It's a pretty cool message considering the time it was released. Unfortunately, the American version removes the introduction of Ogata and Emiko, which fleshes out their characters, as well as another scene where Emiko has a conversation with Ogata about Serizawa's oxygen destroyer. This scene is replaced by the two of them talking to none other than Raymond Burr himself. And my god, does this version suck. You see, in the original Japanese version of the film, Emiko comes to the decision to inform the Japanese government about the oxygen destroyer herself, despite promising Serizawa that she would keep it a secret. It's a lot more impactful as the actor does an amazing job portraying the feeling of betraying a friend, and it's not like Ogata is telling her that she has to do it. His role in the scene is to reassure her that she's making the right choice. On the other hand, in the American re-edit, we get a voice actor dubbing Emiko give a dry and monotone recap of what happened between her and Serizawa. Look, it's not the voice actor's fault. Same goes for the other dub actors and even Raymond Burr himself. I mean, the material they were given wasn't exactly great. But that's not even the worst part. In the end, it's Steve who convinces her to encourage Serizawa to use the oxygen destroyer on Godzilla. I mean, it just completely bypasses the personal dilemma that Emiko goes through. And this is just made worse during the dubbed conversation I mentioned earlier, where we see the dryness of Emiko's dub on full display.
You must use oxygen destroyer against Godzilla.
No.
By far the worst change in the American version is undoubtedly the complete removal of the original movie's message and subtext. In other words, what made the 1954 classic a freaking classic in the first place. And that's the social commentary on the dangers of nuclear weapons and the aftermath of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. That point was so in your face in the original, and rightfully so. It is still something that has relevancy to this day. Somehow we still have morons advocating for nuclear energy and the like in the modern era, despite historical events continuously showing that this is not an effective means of power. I mean, how long until you're gonna take the hint? Plus, we're still hoarding atomic weaponry that could end life on Earth at a moment's notice. But nope! We can't be having that now, can we? We can't have American citizens doing any introspection, questioning our glorious nation, or realising just how deadly nuclear weapons are. That would be bad and un-American. Multiple scenes that hammered home the messaging of the film were either removed entirely or shortened in the American edit, essentially erasing all traces of meaning in the movie. For instance, the scene where a bunch of passengers are on a train, talking about Godzilla, the atomic weaponry that created him, and evacuating Nagasaki due to nuclear weapon attacks in the past. The most insulting removal though is the ending. In the 1954 original, after Godzilla's death, Dr. Yamane has an iconic speech about the dangers of continued nuclear testing. It's by far one of the most memorable parts of the movie, you know, right next to Godzilla of course. In the 1956 re-edit, that speech is replaced by a generic "The day is saved" spiel by Raymond Burr. Jeez, like this is how you neuter a movie, people. Just completely erase any meaningful moral messaging like it was never there in the first place. Instead of taking a serious tone like the original, the American version has a more goofy and hammy overtone. At least I think that was their intention. I mean, the movie opens with an injured Burr struggling for breath under some rubble, in the aftermath of a devastated Tokyo thanks to Godzilla. But later on, when we actually get to Godzilla's rampage through the city, a lot of the original destruction scenes have weird screams and sound effects thrown in. They also replaced some iconic brutal scenes like the passengers on this train screaming for help, and a particularly disturbing scene where a mother tells her daughter that she's about to see daddy soon as they're about to be killed by Godzilla. All of that is replaced by close-ups of Raymond Burr, which I mentioned earlier. I mean, it's just comically bad. As a result, this film ends up feeling like just another monster movie and not, you know, Godzilla. Look, I know this franchise would eventually embrace its wacky side in the later Showa movies, but the serious tone of the original was not forgotten. Eventually the Godzilla franchise would return to its roots with future entries in the Heisei Millennium movies and even further beyond. That's why I think it's important to keep Big G's origins intact and faithful, and that's just another reason why the American version falls flat on its face. So why exactly does the 1956 re-edit differ so much from the original? Well, it's most obviously done to make it more appealing to American audiences of the time. I guess they thought Americans wouldn't like it if there was no white person for them to follow and root for. Considering it was the 1950s, maybe that was true? I don't know. Plus the attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki weren't that long ago, so when the movie was released they also wanted to dodge the controversy bullet, which is why most references to atomic weaponry were completely removed. Still, for all the flack I've given this version, it did introduce the West to Godzilla. It's probably thanks to this re-edit that most people even know that the Godzilla franchise even exists, as it actually performed really well at the box office when it came out. So credit where credit is due. Still, in my opinion, looking back retrospectively, this version is entirely inferior to the original. And now that we live in the era of the internet, there's no excuse not to watch the original Japanese version in all its glory. Anyways, that's all I have to say on this movie. Like if you liked, dislike if you disliked, subscribe for more quality content, and I'll see you guys next time.
Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. It doesn't matter if it's boiled or fried. Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. It doesn't matter if it's boiled or fried.